The Misfits podcast, fostering community through thoughtful and meaningful conversations. Think, inspire, entertain. Shavua Tov, good vach. Welcome to the first episode of the Misfits podcast. I'm your moderator, Gabe Lewin, joined as always by
Rick Gaster
and
Yitz.
Today's episode is sponsored by Crystal Clear Occasions, event planning done right. crystalclearoccasions.com. Follow on Instagram for more information. Okay, this is our first podcast. You guys ready?
Woo, woo. First episode.
That's right. That's right. Okay, we just got out of like 9 years of Yontif. So, Yitz, how was your Yontif?
Extraordinary, interesting, and also it was only like 50%.
Yeah, explain.
Some people only do the parts that they do, you know?
It's like keeping half Shabbos, right?
Mm-hmm. Yom Tov overall was pretty great. I traveled to Detroit with my daughter, saw my family. It's exhausting. And then I was here for 2 days, and I kind of did it on my own terms, and that was more relaxing. So yeah, it's pretty good.
Fantastic. Rivcaster, how was your Yontif?
So I had a very different first half and second half as well. First half, I did what I think do best, which is host a whole much podge of people and bring people together from all different walks of life, with kids, with no kids. I had my kids, single, married, religious, not religious. And it was just beautiful because we all came together. First of all, some people came beforehand and helped out with the sukkah. And I thought that was actually really beautiful because everybody kind of contributed to building the sukkah, enhancing the sukkah, decorating the sukkah, giving ideas on how to make it happen. And this was my first sukkah, and this was our sukkah together. And I think that's a little bit of the theme of the Misfits, you know, just kind of all come together no matter who we are, no matter where we are from. And so that was really beautiful. We all came together, had 75 meals together.
There was 75 meals.
With 175 people.
Oh my goodness.
But thank God I just got a new fridge before Yom Tov, so that helped a lot. But it was really beautiful because there's space for everybody to come in, and there's enough space physically for everyone to kind of go on their own if they need to, or just kind of gravitate towards the people they feel more connected to. And it's just like, I'm always fascinated by seeing the kind of people that just gravitate towards who they gravitate towards, and it could be just completely unexpected connections, and I love seeing that. So that's really part of why I'm doing it and why I'm just gonna keep on doing it. So that was my first half, and my second half, well, I didn't have my kids, and I needed a break from cooking and hosting and entertaining. So I had a few friends staying here, but I did a lot of actually shul going, and I feel like I've gone to shul more in 3 days than I've gone in like 6 months. So that was kind of nice, actually. Simchas Torah was amazing. Beautiful experience, beautiful people, spirituality, women singing, speaking, dancing, rabbi and people just connecting. And
I heard something very special happened at Ner Tamid.
You did.
On Simchas Torah, the women dancing with the Torah.
It's beautiful.
Is that true? Is that accurate reporting?
That is an accurate report, but it is also common.
Oh, yeah?
That is a thing.
For me, it's very shocking.
Yeah, I can see why it would be shocking. I'm saying that like it's an unofficial thing that happens every year.
It's still unofficial.
It's unofficial.
They can't yet endorse it.
I don't know how the Torah ended up over there, but it did.
Okay, well, yeah.
So yeah, it was a very different experience, but it was both very uplifting, and I had overall a very beautiful, meaningful, inspiring Yom Tov.
Fantastic.
What about you, Gabe?
Thank you for asking.
I just had to ask.
I appreciate that. My first half of Yom Tov, very similar. It's like a tale of two Yom Tovim. I had my kids the first half, and I really focus on Yom Tov when I have my kids to really be with them. And so we made the sukkah in my front yard, and it was just really us for the night meals. I didn't want to go out. I wanted to just be with them and enjoy having the experience that I get to have when I'm just me being dad with the kids. That's my favorite thing.
Did you make your own sukkah?
We do.
Mm-hmm.
And they decorated it. They helped me put it up. Just tremendous first half. And then The second half, the kids were with their mother, but they still come to shul.
Hmm.
And two things happened over the Yom Tov that really just hit me very interestingly. One was that Rabbi Motzen at Ner Tamid asked me to daven Geshem, which he's asked me to do that before, but I felt it was a little bit different this year, given everything that's happened over the course of the last year. And I don't know. I always put a lot of effort into, my leading davening, but I put a lot into it. I really just tried to pour out my heart. So I really felt very grateful to be able to have that opportunity. And the second thing was Rabbi Motzen spoke on Yom Tov about how you don't know how people are going to feel on Simchas Torah. Some people might be like joyously dancing. Some people might be crying. Some people might not want to do anything at all.
Meaning as it relates to the fact of
Yeah,
last year.
exactly. And because we're all going to relate to the trauma of the last year very differently. And I was sitting there going, yeah, sure. Because I don't really connect to Simchas Torah very much. It's just not the holiday that I connect to. I'm not a big dance person. I also don't get, I'll have a l'chaim or two, but I don't like get super drunk. And I know some people get super drunk on the holiday. Usually sitting there on the side waiting for the hakafos to end so we can finish davening. I can go take a nap. But this time on the night of Simchas Torah, the first hakafa, I'm like dancing with my kids. I've got my son on my right, both sons in my arms, and we're doing the first hakafa, and I started bawling out crying. And I couldn't explain it. I couldn't explain it except to say that here I am alive with my kids celebrating life. It just hit me in that way, and it was just pretty incredible. I hadn't had an experience like that ever.
Well, it kind of reminds me of what people did after the Holocaust. Like they were dancing with their kids, and that was their legacy, that was their survival, and that was
Exactly. And there's other things that I could talk about, but yeah, we have an episode to do. So our first episode is called "The Shidduch Crisis is Not Real." So, opening thoughts, Rifgaster. This was your idea. You brought this to the table.
Oh boy, I have got a lot to talk about.
Just give us your
Let's try to
opening
narrow
thoughts.
down to a few thoughts to begin with. First of all, I put a lot of meaning into words. What I'm trying to say is that words have a lot of power. So by calling it a Shidduch crisis, it makes it that people are either not even going to want to think about it because it's a crisis, it's out there, it's like global warming or other kind of crisis that no one really wants to think about. And or if they are part of the Shidduch situation, they're in that phase, they're not going to want to either take responsibility for it because it's just not part of what they're able to do. So to me, it's just that word should be eradicated completely.
Before we continue, and yes, I'm going to let you respond, I just want to kind of define our terms. Traditionally speaking, when we talk about a Shidduch crisis, what we generally speaking mean is that we have a lot of single people that are trying to get married in the Orthodox Jewish community, and for some reason, a lot of people, mostly women, I guess, stay single for a long time and they never get married or don't get married till very late, and that is called a crisis because somehow that is a very bad thing. Is that an okay way of like defining the generally accepted phrasing for those who may not be initiated into what Shidduch crisis means?
Yeah, like how is the term being used?
Well, I think we have to just say, like, here's what people think when they think the term Shidduch crisis, and then we're going to kind of break it down in terms of what we personally think is not happening or is happening.
Sounds good.
Okay, Yitz, your opening thoughts.
Remind me, Rifgaster, what was you wanted to say the word crisis is it creates like a...
It just creates this situation where it's just going to kind of scare people away as opposed to give people an opportunity to find ways to make things better or to try to become better. Because after all, in my mind, when there's a challenge somewhere, yes, we're all gonna get frozen. We're all gonna think that, okay, it's impossible. But at some point, at least from my perspective, I'm going to have to find a way to get through it, to get over it, get through it, just find a way around it somehow. And just by calling it crisis, it's just not going to help anyone. It's not going to help the people who are looking to get married. It's not going to help the shadchanim who want to help people get married. It's not going to help the parents. It's not going to help anyone. So what I'm trying to say is that we should focus on what the real problem is.
So what I think I hear you say is there's like a way that people are talking about it, which maybe makes it worse, or it just makes it a way that's hard to relate to it, and it's not helpful. Basically, it doesn't actually help anyone by calling it a crisis. Whereas maybe I think when they first maybe coined this term, the Shidduch Crisis, maybe they hoped that they would cause awareness to the problem by calling it a crisis, and then in the hope that in calling it a crisis, maybe people would do something about it. And you're saying that calling it a crisis actually just kind of makes it worse. We're beyond making awareness. We need to find solutions. We need to give hope. We need to move through it, not just, I don't know, sit there in the, or just the way that talking about it as a crisis, it actually just makes people freeze up, and it doesn't actually lead to any like helpful results.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think to build up on what you were saying, we recently, I think it was last year, we had a Shidduch Crisis panel happening at Ner Tamid. And I thought the idea was
Zipporah Gradko, right? Just call her out. She's the one who initiated it with the OU, right? Rabbi Motzen,
yeah.
Zipporah Gradko, and who was the other rabbi from the
Rabbi
OU?
Hauer.
And Rabbi Hauer from the OU. They had the panel, right? That's what you're referring to?
Right. I thought it was a really great idea, just because it's nice to see that the big people in our community actually care and want to do something about it. So for that part of, so the panel was really a good idea. However, I don't think it was very productive, because here we are a year later, or I don't know exactly how much, but I don't think anything has changed.
Well, what do you think their goal was? Like, what were they trying to accomplish, and how are you measuring? Like, how are you measuring that success? Meaning, like, what's making you like have that feeling?
From when I was there, from what I was hearing, the people on the panel talking, and maybe the couple people asking questions, I think they were trying to make people aware about the discomfort of the single population when people would either look at them, offer them a meal, just the way they were treated by the rest of the population. So this is where I come in and I say, well, then this is not a Shidduch crisis. This is a self-esteem crisis.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so thank you for
Let's
that.
Thank you for that
segue. Thank you for that segue.
She just dropped a bomb over there. Okay, yeah, go ahead.
Okay, thank you for that segue. So we're going to continue on with our next segment, which is, what are the issues? So Rivka Esther, why don't you tell us? You want to start with the self-esteem crisis.
Well, she just hold on. Let's react to that. Let's react. Gabe, what's your reaction to basically the suggestion that what I think she's saying is that they came in there trying to make awareness about how it makes people uncomfortable, and her reaction is saying, well, if people are uncomfortable, maybe it's because they have a low self-esteem.
I think there's a lot happening here. First, there's the inability of the powers that be, whether that's the Rabbanim, Shadchanim, families, doesn't matter who. There's only so much that they can do. So, for example, I will say one thing that has happened, at least at Ner Tamid, is that we now have these WhatsApp groups and emails going out every single Shabbos, every single Yom Tov, where various families are inviting people that they do not know from the shul to their homes, trying to create more community. And a lot of them are single people like me. I've been invited out every single week. And sometimes I have to say no, whether that's because I have my kids, or sometimes I bring my kids, or it's because I've already been invited out, or I just don't feel like going out that week. But there is
you actually like that opportunity where people come out and invite you.
I like that this was a response that was given. I mean, it's not the solution, but it is a start to create more opportunities for more people to get to know me or anybody else who's a single, so that, okay, there's two issues. There's the people who want to date and get married issue, and then there's the I don't want to be alone on Shabbat for meals issue, and I feel uncomfortable having to always ask somebody, hey, can anybody have me for a meal this week? This is an opportunity that was created by our shul, and I think could be replicated by many other shuls, to just at least take care of the problem of, well, what are you going to do alone? That doesn't really fix anything, except that it helps to create community for those who want it and those who are willing to bring new people in. But in terms of self-esteem, I think you're correct. I think that I'm going to get real with everybody. Everybody
Get
ready?
real.
Time to get real.
Hot
It's
everybody.
about to get
Hot
real.
topic.
Hot take.
So I was using a dating platform recently.
Can't be named.
I'm not going to name which one.
The dating app that cannot be named.
It was not that one. But
Doesn't start with a T.
no, it does. No, it does not. It does not. And I saw someone that we all know, and anytime I see someone we all know, I always swipe right because I think it's funny. And this person saw that I swiped right, and then she messaged me and was basically very nice and genuine and said, "Listen, I'm not really interested in that type of relationship with you." And I said, "Oh, that's fine. I wasn't going to use this to ask you out. If I wanted to ask you out, I would literally come up to you and ask you out because that's who I am." But I don't think enough people do that. Now I'm 44 years old and I've lived enough life to be like, I don't have any inhibitions anymore. If I like you, I'm going to tell you and ask you out. And if you say yes, great, we'll have a good time. And if you say no, okay, next. Or as Ariana Grande would say, thank you, next. So, but I don't know that everybody's like me. But it took me a long time to get there. I was definitely not like that when I was in my teens, 20s, 30s.
So I hear you saying that there's a certain maturity, or let's say confidence, that you've gained over the years that allows you to be comfortable asking someone out directly and not rely on a dating app to have that excuse to swipe right on them as your first initiation.
I mean, it's there. It's a tool. All these things are tools. Like, obviously, I've met people through dating apps, and I have dated people through dating apps, whether that is the Jewish ones or non-Jewish ones necessarily, but that's one method. But I've definitely also had friends set me up with someone that they like, and they, I like her, she'd be great for you, I think you two should meet, or just met at a Shabbos table, or just met in shul, or just knew from around. But like, I know that not everybody is as confident as to just say that they're going to go up and talk to someone. It took me a long time to get there, but I do think when it comes to the self-esteem thing, is like, I'm at a place in my life now where if I ask you out and you say no, I'm not going to take that as it is a rejection, but I'm not going to let that affect
Not
me.
personally.
No, because like, how many people have I rejected? There's tons of people I've said no to, and it's not because they weren't wonderful, awesome people. It's just that they weren't my awesome person, and it's okay. So that's where I'm holding on the self-esteem issue. I think some people, not all people, but some people need to step up and just get over the fact that sometimes you will be told no, but being told no is not necessarily a bad thing.
Correct. And with that, I'm going to quote Rabbi Silber, who was at the panel also.
Ooh.
And I think of all the panel, that's like the one quote that stuck out for me, because if we can all live by that, I think we would all do a lot better with our self-esteem. And he said, people are going to say stupid things all the time. You got to learn to grow a thicker skin.
Okay. So this is so there was at least some addressing of the self-esteem. So what do you think also is more like what maybe is a cause of this self-esteem? Like, how is that affecting the singles community? And I think it was saying there's two like kind of issues. One is that singles in the frum community don't necessarily feel part of the community. That's like one issue, and how the community doesn't seem designed to like fit single people in. And the other issue is the fact that well, why is it so hard for all these people to find someone to marry, and why is it so hard for people to find their match? So self-esteem, I guess there's two different ways that can interfere. Like, one is how it would interfere with maybe people finding their way in the community. If they were less, like here we're talking about how if someone had more self-esteem, maybe they would confidently go over to someone and ask them out. But maybe that would have an effect also in the community. If people had more self-esteem, they would just, I don't know, invite themselves out to feel. I don't.
I honestly had never had any trouble with that, and I'm gonna say
Flex.
I'm gonna say I've been single for about 4 years now, and I've never been looked down upon with the eyes that say, "Oi, Nabach, do you need a meal?" Like ever, because I walk like I don't need a meal. And because I know who I am, and because I'm gonna be the one who's gonna be like, I'm gonna add value to our relationship. I'm gonna bring something and I'm gonna contribute something. Just because I don't have a husband right now doesn't mean that I don't have something awesome to share, bring.
I think one thing that we're not talking about, and maybe it's on our list of things to talk about, but under a different word, but I don't know that we're talking enough about mental health. Because I really do think that and I'm not talking about stigmatizing mental health problems, because I think every single person has dealt with mental health issues, and if you haven't, then you didn't live through 2020 and 2021, because there was days where I just broke down, and I've not been diagnosed with depression, and if I had been, that's fine too, but I have not been diagnosed with depression. But there were days where just depression hit me, diagnosed or not, and I had to shut down. I was crying all day. I had to be completely left alone. I couldn't deal with my kids. I couldn't deal with anything. And then, a day later, I'd come out of it and realize, okay, I can move on. Life can go on. But I definitely think there are people who are held back from their self-esteem, from being able to do what you're able to do in terms of confidently move forward and really feel that they have something to contribute, because maybe they don't feel that about themselves. And I don't know how many people are in therapy or are trying to, get themselves help. But I do think that that's a big part of it, is that we need to be very honest about our own mental
Trauma.
health. Oh yeah, our own
I think
trauma.
that
And,
goes into
yeah, absolutely.
next bullet point.
Right. Our own trauma, and as well as recognizing that there are some people in this crisis who are different in terms of their way that they're thinking, different in terms of the way that their brains were created by Hashem. And so some people are not the same as everybody else. Not everybody is quote unquote normal, whatever that means. And so sometimes we stigmatize people who might be a little bit different in the way that they relate to others. And that also could be part of it, is that there are some people who might think, well, because I am, I think differently, I have a different way of seeing the world, I move through the world with a different set of eyes and different brain, that there's no one out there for me in the frum world either. And I don't know where that fits in terms of trauma or self-esteem.
I mean, I think we all experienced at some point some kind of trauma, whether it's at school, at home, in the community,
divorce.
that too.
We're going to talk about divorce as like a whole topic.
That should be a whole.
That's a whole other episode. But it's for real when it comes to this. I mean, one of the things that's holding a lot of people back is the trauma from their divorces. It just is.
That's true. That is very accurate. How do we want to address that?
Separate podcast, separate episode. Maybe we'll have some people on to interview them about their. Would you like to be interviewed about your trauma from your divorce?
Disclaimer: this is not a therapy session.
This is not therapy.
I mean, this could be better than therapy.
Nor is it X bashing. We're not here to X bash.
No.
I don't know.
I think we need to work as a community to empower people. Find a way for people to reclaim who they are before they start a new relationship. Because I think a lot of us also have this idea that we will be happy when we find someone, when we find our magical partner. But I very much believe that we need to be happy first before we get into a relationship.
I've heard this sort of like rhetoric. Like, what does that mean to you? Like, what does that mean? Be happy without someone? Like, all of a sudden you don't need anyone? Like, what does it mean to you? This idea that you're happy and
It means I'm not waiting for that special someone to bring me the happiness that I need or want. Because the second you do, it starts with the expectations, and expectations leads to disappointments, and disappointments lead to resentment, and we can go down the rabbit hole very fast.
so you're saying if someone's waiting, then it's automatically like that's a precedent for resentment.
I mean, it's codependency is what it is.
If you're waiting for someone.
If you need another person to validate you all the time to make you feel like you're whole, I know that the terms that we use in Judaism is like, ezer kenegdo and complete, have a person who's going to be your other half, the other half of your neshama, all these things. This is all narishkeit, okay? It's there is some validity and reality to it, but honestly, if the three of us were married and divorced, does that mean that our exes were not our beshert? Does that mean that our exes were not our ezer kenegdo? Like,
I don't even think we need to go there.
we don't need to go there. The point is that we have to be whole people first before we can make room for someone else. We have to.
And sorry to interrupt, but I
Yeah.
think that's so much more true for a second relation. Like, once you've already been married or been in a really serious relationship for a while and you're trying a second time or third time, I think that it's a lot more accurate.
What do you think? What do you think?
I've thought about this. I have mixed feelings about this sort of rhetoric. I feel like on the one hand, I like the point that you made with Esther about how if someone's waiting, there's a sense that they're just waiting for something to happen. Then yeah, that's a problem. If you can't move forward with your life, you can't be yourself. You can't do the things that you want to do because you feel like, oh, I don't have a partner. I can't do anything. That like waiting mentality. Yeah, I agree. That's just, what are you doing? Like, you can't wait. You're going to live. You're going to live, and then you're going to have a couple of years left, and then what? Right? So that part I definitely resonate with. But the idea that we are whole and that we are okay, that we're totally fine without having a partner, I don't know. I think that's against what most people actually want. Like, the nature of humans is to want to have companionship, and not just friends. Like, they want a close partner, a romantic partner. And without that, I think it makes sense. It's a very human experience to kind of feel like you're not whole. And that also seems like maybe there's too much of a push to be okay without it. Like, oh, you're not like a totally independent
Be the
person.
strong, independent woman you want to
Right.
be.
It's not. I don't think it's that we're saying that you need to be okay being single. I have heard that before, and correct me if I'm not I'm not speaking for you or anybody else. I'm speaking for myself, but it's not that we're saying that you need to be okay being single. It's that I think we need to start being okay with who we are. I'll give you an example, personal example. After I got
You
divorced,
are like the most brave guy. You're like,
listen, I'm just gonna be
downfall.
me. This is the Misfits, okay? I'm gonna just be me. I got out of my marriage of 13 years, and honestly did not know who I was. I had subsumed so much of myself in the marriage that I didn't really know who or what I was. I had no direction. I didn't know what
Same.
I didn't know what I liked. I didn't know what I wanted. I didn't know what I needed religiously, spiritually, romantically. I didn't even know what it was supposed to be like. And it took me at least a year. I didn't date anybody for a whole year after I got divorced. And then even in those early relationships post-divorce, I look back and go, I wasn't ready. Like, I wasn't, but maybe that's okay too. You just have to go out and do it. But I rediscovered theater. Like, you think I'm a drama teacher. That's what I do for a living. But for years, I wasn't doing any theater at all. And it was like soul sucking. And doing Bethel Community Theater, doing Sweeney Todd, a musical about cannibalism, brought me back to life.
The death that
But
brings forth
seriously,
life.
that's what it did. It was like being on stage with people and making a show happen. I did that show summer of 2018. I separated from my ex May of 2018. I auditioned in June of 2018 and performed it in August. Like, that was huge for me. And it just started the process of going, oh, this is who you are. This is what makes you happy. These are the things that make you feel fulfilled and whole. How could I propose to be in a relationship with somebody else when I felt empty? So I think it's not that, I don't think we're saying that people need to be okay with being single. I think what we're saying is you need to be okay with yourself, because if you're not whole with yourself, you're not shalem, then what are you bringing to a relationship?
But
You got to fill up your cup before you're able to give.
right, I get that. But even this part of this even this part of, let's say, the trying to pin like the I don't know, failure for relationships to succeed on that itself, I feel like it's oversimplifying it. It's like we're never fully there. We never fully know who we are. There's always steps. There's always growth, and to hold yourself back, I guess, and sometimes it would be appropriate. Go take some time, figure out who you are, but maybe like not forever. Like, meaning like there's a certain point where it's like we don't fully develop entirely, and where it's a constant process. And I think it's also okay to want to do that with someone. Maybe be conscious of where you are, how much you know about yourself, how much you're still discovering. But the idea that I'm not going to date anyone because I just don't yet know exactly how much of who I am, I would prefer if people were just like, listen, I don't fully know, but like that's something that I'm ready to learn together and grow together with someone, as opposed to just writing people off for not being ready. I think it goes vice versa. Here's how I experience this. When I hear people talk about how they want to do this to themselves, they want to wait till they're like totally like they figured it out. They went to therapy. They did this retreat and that retreat, and they spent 10 years, developing all their new hobbies. And it's like, it's great. Do that for yourself. Like, I feel like there's also like, I don't know, that kind of thing scares me. It's like, well, I don't think I'm ever going to be there. So like, I don't want to be rejected for that reason. I feel like it's normal to always be growing, and it takes time to get there. And I guess that's just like the empathy towards that process, towards that state. That makes me personally feel better when I hear people that they understand that it's important to grow and to figure out who they are, but it's also okay to not fully be there, and to grow together with that, and to enter into a relationship, honestly recognizing that, but still try. It's not like that's you're puzzle. You can't. It's forbidden. You can't do it. You didn't go to therapy for 10 years. You can't even start dating. Like that sort of thing.
It's a balance, just like everything else. I think, yes, I agree with everything you said, but I think it's going to be like a little different for everybody also, depending on how they feel about themselves, about how they felt about their previous relationships, about the whatever trauma they've been through, whatever, um, their level of maturity. It's going to be so different for everybody. So it's a little bit hard to generalize, in my opinion. But yes, I do agree that you're never going to be ready. You're never going to be 100% ready. But I think we all have to be ready enough to feel comfortable to be in a relationship with someone, because we're going to have to be in a place where there's going to be some give and take. And if we're not able to either give or receive, accept, because sometimes accepting is another form of giving, then that's when conflict is going to happen. And then if we don't have enough skills or maturity to be able to handle those conflicts, then that's just going to create more tension. And
I want to take us back for a second, because we started this whole conversation by talking about the Shidduch Crisis, right? I kind of want to break this into it, because I had some thoughts about this as we were like preparing. I want to kind of break it into a variety of different categories. There is definitely people who are in a very specific Shidduch system. These are usually younger people who've never been married before, people who are operating with parents and shadchanim, matchmakers, who are trying to bring young people together to get them married. and there's
You mean like in Fiddler on the Roof?
no, I mean like in hotel lobby rooms with people with
Sodas and
sodas and talking.
Shabab Nakim.
That's
Oh my
yeah.
gosh, has anyone seen that show?
Whatever it is, but like sitting, I've been on plenty of those kinds of dates, but I was also single, never married, and it's a very different category when you are from birth. You're Orthodox from birth, whether you are someone who is modern Orthodox, or if you are in the yeshivish system, or if you're in the Hasidish system, which is very, very different, where there's a difference between a Shidduch crisis in a yeshivish system where the parents are heavily involved and the two kids are being vetted out before anything happens. That's a different crisis, because I don't know that I'm qualified to talk about whether or not there's a crisis in that world, because I hear the most ridiculous things, or I've read the most ridiculous things. Any of you have ever read the Where, What, When Shadchan? Ask the Shadchan? It is so insane when the idea that a person's
it should be put in the comedy section.
tablecloths matter, that it matters. These are insane things that people are, or the lists of, there's a trend on TikTok that's like, have you seen this trend on TikTok? Like people like say lawyer, 30s. You've
That
seen
song.
that song, right?
Looking for a
But
man in finance.
right.
6'5", blah blah. What's
Right.
the other one?
Whatever it is. But then there's like the from one, right?
Blue eyes. And then the from one's like
Learner.
looking for a man in
Yeshiva.
Shidduch.
Looking for a man in Kolel.
Exactly.
Right? Like that, I don't have any clue how to help. That is a completely different system. If there's a crisis there, y'all need to take care of your business, because I have nothing for you. I also don't think we're talking about the crisis that is very real of people getting married in the frum world, but not being ready for marriage, and not being ready because they don't really know each other. And then all of the real stuff that comes out causes divorce. We're not talking about the divorce crisis. We're talking about people who are trying to get married, or people who are single. So as far as I'm concerned, yes, there is a crisis in the yeshivish system. Yes, there is a crisis in the Hasidish system. Yes, there's a crisis in the modern Orthodox system, but I don't have much to say about that.
Well, what do you think their crisis is?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, it's a variety of things, but I do know that I have friends, relatives, and since I've been teaching since the dawn of time, former students who are in their mid to late 30s, who are single, never married, and perfectly legitimate, wonderful people, but they're not getting married, and I don't know why.
Okay.
But
This sort of thing, this sort of
but
crisis.
I can't speak to that. I can't
Right.
speak to why a 35-year-old woman with a very good job and who is very, who is attractive and has a lot of qualities and a good family, why that person isn't meeting quality men, or why
Vice versa.
Although I know fewer of them.
Well, I think that explains a little bit.
That does
The
explain.
question is, why would that specifically be a Shidduch crisis situation?
Well, could I say something here? I asked a friend about this on my way here. I was like, I'm about to do a podcast. We're talking about the Shidduch crisis, and she's like, well, it is a crisis. There's so many eligible young women who can't find a man, and all the men get all the resumes, and the women are just like floating out there. And they're great. They're great women, but like they just can't find a Shidduch. There's no men out there. In fact, their resume is not even getting in front of anyone's faces. I guess that's more specific to like the very yeshivish from communities. She believes that it's legit. There's just tons of women and there's just not enough men. And I was like, okay, let's get into it. What's happening? Is it simply that there's just more women than there are men? Is that what it is? If you count the men between the ages of 25 and 30, and then you count the women between the ages of 25 and 30 that are single, and you'll find that there's just more women than men. I don't think that's true. I think there's
I actually think that is true.
How is that possible? Let me break it down. Just, I'm a guy who's been studying numbers lately.
This is why Tevye says, I have 5 daughters.
And there's someone out there that has 5 sons. Okay, here's some things about numbers. It doesn't really matter, but I think in this context, if we want to say that this is the crisis, is that there's just not enough, let's break it down. I believe, I don't know if this is 100% accurate, but there are just as many men as there are women in the age bracket that are single. We could find out. I'm going to be doing a survey, as you all may find out. I'm doing a survey, and we're going to find out, at least to some degree. But what I think is happening is not that there's just not enough, that there's just way more women than there are men. No, I think there's the same amount. We could find out, could do a real study, research, statistics. But what is a reality, what is definitely, I think, what makes sense, and this is not about statistics, it's just common sense, is that there are going to be more women that are only interested in a very small group of men. And that small group of men cannot marry all of those women. So what that ends up looking like is that there are more women than men, because there are more women interested in this particular group of men than there are possibly than there are men to marry all those women. And that applies to single girls just as much as it does to divorce.
But here's the thing, and I just went on shidduchcrisis.com because it's a real website.
So much for our research.
No, I'm serious. And it says causes of the crisis. The crisis can be summarized into one phase: age gap. Yeshivish, Litvish circles, it is customary for boys to start shidduchim at 23. For girls, it's age 19, which is a 4-year age gap. Here's the thing. I can't speak to this, and I don't know that we should be speaking to this, because this is a problem that's being addressed in those communities, by those communities, for those people. I'm not those people. Go ahead.
There's a sentiment, though, and whether or not it's statistically true or not, I don't think it matters. Here's the sentiment. Women feel like there's so many of them out there that they can't find a guy. And it's like, why not? Is it that these are women that they believe that they're very qualified. They're very good women. They're smart. They're intelligent. They're beautiful. And it's just like, where are all the guys? Where's all the good guys? This is a sentiment that people have. And it's based on their experiences. And their experiences are legitimate. That means that this is something that's happening. And apparently it's very common. Enough that people verbalize this sentiment. And I think that sentiment is true. I don't think that's representative of like a statistical fact that there are more women than men. I don't know if that's true, but the sentiment is definitely true. And then we could address that sentiment. I think we could address that sentiment. Like, why is there that sentiment?
I mean, I was going to say, then maybe we need to move on to a religious crisis, because I feel like there are a lot of good guys out there.
So where are they?
They're all around. You just got to open up your home. They will come right through.
Okay,
this gets us to an interesting spot, because honestly, I don't know how much more I have to add to whether there is a crisis. I was trying to break us down into, we have different categories of people that fit into different groups, and whether they have crises or not, and whether or not I'm qualified to even speak about that. In terms of what I feel like the three of us have expertise about, it's the community that we're in, that we're trying to represent. We're talking about mostly people who are either single, never married, but in their 30s and 40s and maybe 50s. We're talking about people who are at various levels of their religiosity. We can talk about a religious crisis in another episode. I think that's an entire can of worms. And we're also talking about people who are divorced. And the question that I think we've talked about trauma, we've talked about self-esteem, we've talked a little bit about stupidity, we've talked a little bit about immaturity.
We didn't talk about stupidity and immaturity.
Well, we talked. I said we talked a little bit about it. We didn't get all the way in there. But I don't want to have a 2-hour podcast. So I do want to ask, what do you think we should be doing about it?
Opening your home and just inviting everyone in.
That's one. And maybe I'll add, if I have to knock at every single person's door and tell them, You have been through a lot. You have overcome a lot. You are very powerful and you are very strong. So walk like you mean it and be the best version of yourself, and you will attract the person you are meant to be with.
Okay.
Do you have things that you would like to do or things that you think we should be doing?
What can we do? What can we do actionably to help people meet each other? Or maybe it's not even that they're not meeting each other. Maybe it's they are meeting each other, but they're not in the right place. They're not confident. What do I think we can do? I don't know.
I honestly think that in addition to bringing people together, which is I think, a very important aspect of this, I think we also need to, I'll say something that I think I benefit from, and I think that I would like more from, which is people looking out for me. If you know someone, if you like me, if y'all like Gabe, maybe you don't, it doesn't matter. But if you do, and you know somebody and you're like, you know what, that person would be great with Gabe, or hey, Gabe, you'd be great with that person. That's something that means something, because you know what? Apps suck. Sorry, they do. And shadchanim don't really know me. Like, I can go into a shadchan's house and sit down and talk to them for an hour, but they don't know me. You two know me better than any other shadchan does. You also know single people. Help me out here. I mean, but also I need to come and I need to come out and be like, hey, help me out. So if people want to date, if people want to get married, tell your friends that you trust, hey, I'm trying to date, I'm trying to get married. I don't really know where to look for anybody. If you have anyone in mind, let me know. I think that's also a stepping up of being mature. Like, we need to stop being so immature about what we want and where we can find it. If you want to date and you're trying to get married again, tell your friends that this is where you're at and what you're looking for, because your friends know you better than some shadchan will, and they also know you better than some swiping app does.
And your friends don't necessarily have to be other singles. They can be married people.
Absolutely. Your married friends too. I met, it didn't work out, but it was a great relationship for however long it lasted. I feel every relationship I've been in post-divorce has been a very positive experience, even if it ended badly, because it helped me grow and learn and refine what I need and what I want in terms of what I'm looking for. But it was a great relationship, and I met her at my friend's house randomly. And then I, afterwards went up to them and said, "Who's that?"
Sounds very natural, organic.
And then they said, "Stay away."
Oh.
And then 6 months later, I said, "Still stay away?" And they were like, "Let's find out." No, it turns out she was still married at the time. That was why they were telling me to stay away.
Final points to share.
Do you have anything that you think is actionable that you want to share with us?
I don't have any, I think when I think about what is actionable, I'm thinking way too macro. Like, what is the big picture? How can we solve a huge communal breakdown, and how can we make more social opportunities and help the people be confident in those opportunities? And all of these things. There's so many different pieces, but probably on an actionable level, it's probably smaller steps. Like Rivka Esther hosts, making those Shabbosim that's a very direct impact. You're actually getting single people together and they're growing their network, and that leads to more people getting to know each other.
And it's very natural and organic, and there's no pushing and there's no pressure. And
I will say, though, as someone who, I don't always come to your events. And it's not because I don't like you. It's because
too loud.
No, it's just that I don't do well in big crowds. I am not the crowd person. The only thing I like going to in terms of crowds, like as a scene, I don't like scenes. So unless it's Birkas Kohanim at the hotel. But besides that, I've never been one to go to like festivals. I don't like going to like Sababa festival. People were trying to get me to go to. I'm like, please no. While I do think that it's important to have events like Rivka Esther, you're hosting, and the tremendous things that you're doing with your hosting, and also Shabbatonim, like what the Chesners are doing here in town. We should support what they're doing as well. I know that for myself, and I'm guessing for others as well, I don't operate well with large crowds. 6 people, 7 people, a table's worth of people, so that I can have real conversations with people, see them, talk to them, not, bits and pieces. And if it can be where it's thought about, like if someone thinks, oh, I want these people to get to know each other, I want these people to be introduced. To me, that I've tried to do that as well. I would like to see more people doing things like that as well.
Okay. Smaller gatherings,
Mm-hmm.
like Shabbos meals, maybe,
All right, everybody. Last thoughts. Any last thoughts on the Shidduch crisis? Is not really a crisis, although it kind
From
of sounds
Shidduch,
like.
we have come from the Shidduch crisis to the Shidduch opportunity.
I think that's true. Do you have any final thoughts yet you want to share with us?
It's a mindset. That's it. We're having a new mindset, one new approach. We're going to make good things happen. It's all part of this building community. Hopefully part of that is that people can find a match. They could find a Shidduch, find a nice partner, and find their Ezer Kenegdo.
Yeah, build yourself so you can build a better community and a better family.
Yeah, I think also it sounds like, as we're talking about it, it's like it sounds more and more that they kind of go hand in hand. The more you have a sense of community, the more likely we can add to that community and help people find Shidduchim.
And also, don't get hung up on rejection. Just understand that people come, people go. On to the next person. If it doesn't work out, it's okay.
And don't get hung up on someone's tablecloth color.
That's right. Tablecloths do not matter. Or all tablecloths matter. That's what it really is. By the way, we should all vote. I voted today. Go vote if you are allowed to in this country. Thank you everyone for listening and for joining us. Please like and follow us on Instagram at the Misfits Podcast, and like and subscribe to our feed on YouTube. Please make sure to give us a 5-star rating on all apps. And if you would like to leave a comment, you can send us an email to themisfitspodcast2024@gmail.com. And once again, our episode today is sponsored by Crystal Clear Occasions, event planning done right. crystalclearoccasions.com. Follow on Instagram for more information. All right, everybody. See you next time. Thank you so much.
Bye.